Good morning, guys. It's November 13th, about 9 a.m. Today, we are going to talk about you've done your job as an agent, you've helped your buyer purchase the home. Now you're under contract, meaning both the sellers and buyers have fully executed the contract by initialing and signing all the necessary spots in the contract. Now, what do you do? So the first thing that we're going to make sure is we have all our disclosures and our contract signed properly. So we're going to start by going in the loop. This is a real life example of one I just put under contract. So, again, personally, I learned the best by just seeing real life examples. So at this point, you've received the executed contract back from the seller's agent, and you're going to put that executed contract as well as the executed disclosures back in your loop. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our loop and we're going to update the status. So as you can see, when we had initially made the offer, we put it under purchase, and then under status is pre-offer, but now that we're under contract, we can move it on to the next phase. Go ahead and put in the sales price, whatever you guys agreed on, and then we're going to hit the address, and that's going to take us to the loop. So I normally like to do a quick scan, just make sure that I have everything, all my I's dotted and my T's crossed. So I'm just going to kind of go back in here and make sure I have everything. So in this case, this one's a good real life example because the seller has agreed to pay 2.5% commission. However, the buyers signed a 3% exclusive buyer broker agreement. So we're going to get 2.5% from the seller, and then we're going to get half a point from the buyers. So that's something I communicated with them initially during that conversation is, I'm going to do my best to negotiate all the transaction, all the commission costs from the seller side, but on the off chance there may be, about half a point that you'll be responsible as the buyer. So even looking through this document, I noticed that I missed one little initial on the bottom, so we'll get to that in a second. So again, the compensation agreement, I know we just went over this on the previous video. It's always eXp Realty LLC. Sometimes I'll just leave this blank because you can see on the contract in blank it says 30 days. Initial here, I signed previously, initial here, signature there, and then I saw I missed the initial down here. So I'm going to use my hotkey. Again, that's Option I, hits the initial right there, and I'm going to assign it to myself, and I'll sign, and I'm going to save the document. So that's all done. So again, this is why I kind of like to go back and just double check my own work, because if it gets kicked back during eXp's broker review, that's one extra step that you have to do to stop and turn around and stop whatever you're doing. So this is a good example because originally we made the offer at 460. The property was listed at 475, and the seller's agent took our initial offer and made some adjustments. And so you can see she crossed it out. She wrote this number here, 467.5 on top, and then she had the seller initial. So the same thing. Anytime there's a change or an edit made in the contract, we have to have all parties initial next to the change. So that's why we have one initial here to sign off on this change. And then, of course, if we change the purchase price, the balance to close also changes. So we initialed here. The seller also changed the closing date. So the same thing, initial on both sides. We decreased the financing contingency period from 27 to 21 days. So again, seller, buyer initial. Besides that, on the contract, not too much else has changed. Again, you see I have the 599 transaction coordinator there. Obviously, the seller's going to designate the closing agent / title company. In this case, we are using this law firm, and I'll show you how to communicate. One of the steps that we take to communicate with the title company / law firm after we go under contract. So you guys already know the contract at this point from the previous video, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but you'll see we have a pretty tight turnaround here of 5 days of the inspection. I'm just going to scroll down page by page, make sure we have all our initials. Again, I have the compensation agreement seller buyer broker here checked. There's no additional terms. We weren't negotiating any kind of money for closing costs. This specific buyer was putting 30% down. Information down here, and this listing did have 2 different agents. We just want to make sure we put both of their names and information on there. This document was my initial compensation agreement during the offer. So now we are actually using the 2.5%. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to split this document. But as you can see, when I go under File, there's a button here to split document. But Dotloop does this funny thing where when you have a field on it, an electronic field like this, it won't allow you to split it. So how do we get around that? What we do is we download this as a PDF. We hit the back button. So I'm not going to need this anymore. So I'm actually going to archive this, get it out of my way. I'm going to add document. I'm going to upload this same document again one more time into the loop. I'm going to come in here. And now you can see if you go under File, Split Document is now an option that you can use. So the reason why we want to split it, right, is because we have this old compensation agreement that's attached that we no longer need. So the last thing we want to do is confuse the broker at eXp and have 2 different compensation agreements showing 2 different numbers. So you can see that this is 13 pages. So under File 1, we're going to put execute a contract, page 1 through 13. And then on the second page, I'm going to actually name this as archive because I know I don't need it. And I'm going to split the document, hit done. So you'll see here is now it's 2 separate documents of PDF. So we're going to hit the back button here. So now I have the executed contract, and this is the one I don't need. The name makes it easy for me to reference it, so I'm going to archive this one. So now we have the executed contract, we have the compensation agreement, we have the seller's disclosure. Again, I'm just going to kind of glance over this to make sure that we have our initials, signatures. Perfect, everything looks good. Lead-based paint disclosure since the property was built pre-1978. And again, the lead-based paint disclosure is only for properties that are built before 1978. If a property is built after 1978, we don't need the disclosure because everything looks good there. And by the way, guys, you do need to sign the bottom of this document here. And I see a small thing I forgot to check one of these. But if you see, if I try to add a checkbox here, that's going to clear out this information, the buyer's initial and signature. So what I'm going to hit is download. I'm going to re-upload this document. I'm actually going to replace the old version. I'm going to go there, I'm going to add a checkbox because a buyer has an inspection period, just like with all contracts. That means that they've received an opportunity or mutually agreed upon period to conduct a risk assessment or inspection. So we have that. This is why I like to go back and just double check my work. So this is the exclusive buyer broker agreement, right? I want to make sure I have everything correct. So you'll see here they signed up for 3%. Got all our initials. Okay, we're all set there. Affiliated business disclosure. Have the address, we have the date on there. Okay. Again, we're just double checking our work. And then the last one is the wire fraud prevention notice. Okay, so everything looks good. So we're ready to kind of start the next steps. This is an old form. I'm going to archive this. I like to keep everything nice and neat. So the next step is once you're under contract, and I emailed you guys an example of this yesterday on November 12th, is I have an email template that I use in my inbox. The first one is this one. We have this email. I'll call it the intro email, and I'll send all this to you guys. Or you can also create your own template from the email that I forwarded you. As soon as the buyer goes under contract, we want to keep them in the loop because this is where our work really begins. And all the hard work that you've done up to this point of putting them under contract, of helping them find the right house, that's just the beginning. Their experience during, while they go under contract is equally just as important, if not even more important, because this is going to be what they remember months and months after the transaction is complete. Did my agent walk me through the process? How easy did they make it for me? Did they kind of tell me what was coming up? So automatically after they go into contract, we send them this email. So I'll send it to both of you guys right now. So you guys have an example. And then right after that, we send another email, which is detailing the next steps. Because not all, guys, not all the time, do people have time to be on the phone with us? Like this specific client, he's a surgeon, he's in the operating room usually for, half the day. And so having something in writing too, as well as verbally, is very, very important. So at this point, I've updated the buyer and I'll say, hey, we're officially under contract. I'll send an email detailing the next steps. When you're available, I'm also available to go over the next steps by phone, right? So they responded, but they never called me. So I'm assuming they saw my email. So again, I'm going to send this to you guys. So you'll see here that all the highlighted parts is where it's going to be your job to go in there and put in the pertinent information. So for example, first name, I just want to go back and see. So you can see this is the email that I sent them. So you put their name here. So in this case, it's Yafet and Allison. Here are the next three steps. Sometimes I'll kind of change this part, this first line here, depending on buyer situation. So this is a investment property, right? So I just change this up a little bit. So the first step is to wire the earnest money deposit. Number two is to get a home inspection. Number three is to make the mortgage loan application, right? So nice and simple, 3 steps. If you ever forget what are the terms of the contract, you can go back and refer to your contract. So let's talk about earnest money deposit first. The title company or the law firm handling the transaction always holds the earnest money deposit. We never hold it, and EXP never ever holds it. So this is very, very important. So the earnest money deposit right here is the 10,000. So you'll see that on this blank, I put 10,000. And the most important date that you need to know is the effective date of the contract. Well, what's the effective date? The effective date is the last day that both parties have signed and executed the contract. So you'll see that we actually initially made this offer on the 11th of November, but we went back and forth during negotiations, and the buyers didn't sign off on this counteroffer until the 12th. So that means that the effective date is November 12th. So if the effective date is November 12th, that's the day that everything is going to be based off of. So if you have 5 days for inspection period, then you do 5 days from the 12th. So now we know that inspection period ends November 17th at midnight, so basically 11:59 p.m. We need to have the deposit done within 3 days, right? So 3 days on the contract. So these dates are very, very important because if you miss those deadlines, this is a big deal. Because it's our job as the agent to kind of remind people and gently nudge them, say, hey, this is a legally binding contract. There's certain dates that we have to follow. And if you don't follow those dates, then the buyer is basically at default. So the EMD to be deposited by, again, 3 days from the 12th. So that puts us at November 15th at 11:59 p.m. One thing to be cognizant of is, let's say we go under contract on the 14th, but we have 3 days, right? So we have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But that's 3 days. But we can't make a deposit on Sunday. So essentially, if we're going under contract, let's say on a Thursday, you have to deposit it. By that Thursday or Friday, because you can't make the deposit on the weekend. So that's just, one of those intricacies to kind of keep in mind. So now that we have our basis for all this information, last thing we need to take into consideration is the financing contingency period. This is essentially the time that the buyers have to get loan approval, to get an inspection, to get the appraisal done on the property. So everything's going to get done within 21 days. So 21 days from November 12th. So I'm just going to check on my calendar, 7, 14, 21. So that's going to be December 3rd, right? At 11:59 p.m. So now we're ready to kind of fill out all our information with the dates that we've been given. So the deposit amount you see here is the $10,000. There needs to be received by November 15th. I've copy and pasted the title company's information. Yesterday we went over this briefly on the property itself. The title company wasn't listed on there. A lot of times agents don't list it. So it's, I like to reach out and just to make sure I don't have to go back and mess with this contract again. If you ever needed to go back and find the MLS sheet again, you see since we're under contract, the agent changed it as pending. So I had to go in there and check this pending box. And there you go. She's marked it as pending. And I always like to make sure that she has my information on there correctly in the right office. It doesn't always happen. And you can see under closing agent, it was actually blank. So I had actually texted listing agent number 2 for this information. So she sent it to me, and that's how I was able to write it into the contract. Copy and pasted all this information from the contract over to here. And then next, we have the inspection period, right? How many days the inspection period is for, and the inspection period ends on what date. So we have all this information here. This is our little cheat sheet. There's 2 inspectors I like to work with on a normal basis, but of course they can use whoever they want. And then of course, last step is to fill out the mortgage loan application. So they do have 5 days to make the loan application. Because on the contract, you can see here, they have 5, on line 97, they have 5 days. So these dates are, these numbers aren't just, a fill in the blank. These are real hard deadlines that people have to meet. So and then we're going to give them a list of summary. Effective date of contract, right? I'm going to have all this information in there. And one thing that we're talking, I think one thing I am going to add is mortgage loan application. So we have 5 days from the effective date, which is the 12th. So it would be November 17th. So for this example, I'm going to use the dates. Right, so this is the example. So I'm going to have all these dates here for them. If they ever need to refer back and they feel a little lost, they know, hey, I have this beautiful email to refer back to. And on the bottom, I will always attach a copy of the executed contract as well as the disclosures. But at the time of we executed this contract, the disclosures were not ready. So I am going to send that in a separate email outside of this training video. But normally we will attach the contract and the seller's disclosure, then lead-based paint. But in this case, guys, it doesn't always work out as beautifully as that because our standard process sometimes gets a little disrupted. For example, the seller's agent did not have the attachment on the MLS. So this is something I had to ask for her after the fact, and she sent it to me after we went under contract. So I sent this email off to both the buyers, and you guys see that I CC'd you on both of it, so you have an example of what it looks like. So now we have to loop in all the different parties, right, of this transaction in, so everybody is on the same page. So step number 1, send intro email, and I'm going to call email number 2 to buyers and attach executed contract and disclosures. Step 2 is to loop in all relevant parties, can't spell, which is the title company / law firm. We're going to loop in the lender, and we're going to loop in the seller's agent. Because at this point, the seller's agent only has a copy of what the seller has signed, right? And so we need to respond back and send her a copy of our compensation agreement as well as the 2 signed disclosures, as well as the executed contract. So this is what we're going to do next. So before we started the video, I saw that the title company has sent me some information. So in order to loop the title company / law firm, we're going to have to send them the information for the buyers. So they were proactive and they already reached out to me. That way they could send the buyers the wiring instructions to make the $10,000 deposit. So it's very important that we don't delay when we send them the information. So I'm going to reply here. So the buyer information, I like to just go back to my loop because everything's already centered there. And you can refer to all the parties here. So Yafet Tillahan, and then his wife. He is normally almost always at work. So I'm going to help the title company a little bit here and just tell them, who the main point of contact, because she's normally a lot easier to reach. And I'm going to provide the phone number. And then she also asked for my information. She also asked for the broker commission percentage, name and address, state license number, and the MLS and MLS number. And MLS number is only pertinent to me since I have a mortgage license. So for here, you guys would just put your state license number. So this case, 2.5% from the sellers. Total commission is 3%. 2.5% is from the sellers. 0.5% is from the buyers, and then 599 transaction coordinator fee from buyers. So it's very important we specify. So when the title company goes to prepare their closing / Alta statement, they know who to credit and who to debit. She's also asking for my NMLS number. It's here in my signature. She's also asking for our, and this one's a little bit more unusual, but you know what? Since they're asking for it, I'm just going to make their job as easy as possible. Our broker's information is in Jacksonville. So it's eXp Realty LLC. And I'm just going to do a quick Google search here so you can see the information is right here. So that's pretty much it. I'm just going to double check one more time. That's pretty much it. And I'm also going to attach a copy of the executed contract as well as the buyer broker agreement. Why? Because that's our physical proof that the buyer has agreed to pay our commission or a portion of it. So the compensation agreement is the proof that the seller's going to pay part of our commission, and the exclusive buyer broker agreement is the buyer's proof that they're going to pay our commission. So I'm going to attach exclusive buyer broker agreement. I'm going to attach the executed contract and then these three. And then we also have that's it. We got all three there. We're going to hit send. So now we're done with this one. So now we move on to the lender. So how do we know where to send the lender's information if you haven't had a chance to talk with the lender yet? Well, I know yesterday my client sent me the pre-approval letter. So Jody Dillon. So I can see her email address here as jdillon@bell.bank. Interesting email. So same thing, except this one, the lender doesn't really need to know the commission. They don't need to know. They only need a copy of the contract. Yafet. So I know in this specific case, the only Yafet is going to be on. Only Yafet is going to be on the mortgage. And I just noticed a little something that I had the wrong lead-based payment disclosure on there. So I need to send the right one where we had made the checkbox here. That's what I was looking at. So the lender does need the disclosures for their record. This is the wrong one, so I'm gonna actually just move it to trash. Get nice and organized. So I'm gonna send them this, the lead-based paint, and I'm gonna send them the as-is contract. I'm gonna attach both of these, and then remember we also have this seller's disclosure. So I need to download this. So her name is Jody. I'm going to give her some pertinent information. We have 5 days. And then remember 21 days for the mortgage loan commitment. So this is going to help just kind of keep them on track too, rather than Jody having to dig through the contract and put everything there. I think this just simplifies everything. So the easier that I can make everybody else's life better and easier, I'm going to do that. So that's December 3rd. So that's everything there. And then I'm going to CC, I was going to CC the buyer, but I'm going to do that in a separate email. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to tee this off. Now the lender has a copy of the contract and the disclosure to work with. Lenders don't need the seller's disclosure; they just need lead-based paint. So I'm going to tee this off, and then lender now is done. So right, the next step is a seller's agent. So I saw she sent me an email this morning, and then you can see she's just sent me the disclosures. So I'm going to respond back. Let's see here. Okay, so this version has that initial on there, lead-based paint, seller disclosure. I'm going to let her know, here's the signed disclosures. Most up-to-date compensation agreement. I had missed. So I'm just going to let her know to use that for her compliance purposes. I'm going to kind of loop her in on what's going on. So I'll tell her I forwarded a copy of the contract to the lender and sent title, buyer's information to make the escrow money deposit. Sent. And then that's pretty much it. And then I'll let her know I'll keep you updated as soon as the inspection is scheduled. Now we're going to hit send. Now she's got everything here. She knows what's going on. So the next step for us on our end, so I sent that email to the buyers yesterday, is we need to make sure that they indeed do make the loan mortgage application. So, today's only kind of technically day one, right? So I'm going to check in. Hey, I'll check in with the buyer, say, hey, did you make the loan application? Hey, did you get a chance to schedule the inspection? And here's a friendly reminder about making the escrow money deposit. So I will reach out to the buyers once I see the title company sends the buyers the wire instructions to kind of just gently remind them again. So now we have all that done. We need to go in SkySlope and submit all the paperwork on our brokerage side. I know we've gone over this previously via Zoom, but for the sake of training, I'm going to do it one more time just so you guys have it on video. So create new, it's always transaction, so we're representing the buyer side, not the listing side. Create transaction. So this is a purchase. We're under contract. So I'm going to add a property here under address lookup. There we go. This popped up. So you can see two different options here. The MLS always has the fields already pre-filled out. So anytime I have the MLS option, I always click on this one rather than this Google Maps because it's going to save me some time to not have to enter in legal description, the folio ID, all that good stuff. So which office is it for? You see that it's automatically fills this out. Select a checklist. So this one is going to be a purchase and a sale. Right, so just select the right one for you. If it's new construction, you select new construction, but in this case, it's going to be a purchase. You can see even home was built in 1940. And then we go back to our purchase price. So again, once you're wheeling and dealing, you're going to have a lot of contracts. So I always like to just make sure my contract is pulled up next to me. So the contract acceptance date is incorrect. So I'm going to have to go back and select yesterday's date. Expected closing date is right here, guys, on line 53. So the 16th of December. And the source, and this was a personal customer. So I'm going to hit SOI, sphere of influence. So I don't like to give my clients information, but that's just me. I'm just going to put in a random number there. Seller's name, again, you can refer back to the contract. Continue. Here's all the information. So Maria Warner. I am going to put the other agent's information on there for EXP. Hit save and then continue. So your next primary contact is, in this case, again, we'll go back and refer to, see, they've already responded back to me. But again, if they don't respond back to you again, remember, just refer to this. So this one's a law office. In this case, I'm actually going to put attorney. So most of the time it's going to be title, almost always, but in the rare cases that it's attorney, that's exactly what I'm going to put. I'm going to save myself a little bit of work here. I'm just going to copy and paste the information. Continue. Does this deal involve a loan officer? Yes, absolutely. And remember earlier, we had sent this email off to the loan officer. So I'm going to copy her email address, and if you're like me, I've already forgot her information, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to use a pre-approval letter. So the company is Bell Bank, Jody Dillon, Jodee Dillon. No, we're not going to be using a transaction coordinator, guys. You're going to be managing your own transactions for the first 10. at least 7 to 10. And once you feel really comfortable, we are going to outsource this part of the transaction to somebody else. But it's very important that you know this, so that way you know the inner workings and what goes on behind the scenes. So sales commission is 3%, right? And then I'm going to add in a couple notes here. So let's use this one as an example because I think it's really good. So we're at 467, right? So this is how I'm going to break it down. Purchase price 467.5. I'm just going to go back when I verify one more time. 467.5. We're getting total of 3% plus the 599 transaction coordinator. So our sales commission, and I'm going to put this in here, would be 467.5 times 0.03, and then we have to add 599. So in this case, we're going to put the dollar amount. And then I'm going to come here, I'm going to put all the notes. It'll be 2.5% from seller, 0.5% from buyer, 599 trans from buyer. So now when they go work things in the background, they'll know what's what. Listing commission is 0. I'm not sure why. Interesting. I mean, obviously we're not represented in the listing agent, so we have no idea. Must be a positive number. Okay, that's the first, guys. So, and I'm just gonna put point 1. So we can get on to the next page. I'm not sure why they would need this information since we're only on the buyer side. So if you run into this issue, just put the same thing, and it really won't matter to EXP anyways. Will the brokerage be holding earnest money deposit? No. And then we're going to create transaction. Okay, so now we come to our checklist, right? Sometimes it seems a little daunting, like there's a whole lot of stuff going on, but it's really not, guys. You'll be very, very familiar with all these documents already. So we're just going to kind of go through each one and knock it out. Buyer broker agreement. So we already have that. So here's our buyer broker agreement. I'm going to upload that. Keep going down the list. We have executed purchase contract. Easy enough. Attach that. Escrow money deposit. I'm going to put a little note. It's not available yet. So this is the deposit you get once the buyer wires $10,000 to the title company / law firm. And the next is the HOA disclosure, or HOA. They also call it the HOA addendum. So if you imagine if you have a neighborhood that has a $100 HOA fee, for example, per month, the seller has to disclose that. So that's the form that you would get signed and put in here. But since on this contract we don't, I'm going to put NA, no HOA. FHA addendum, I'm going to put not applicable, conventional loan. We don't have the flood disclosure yet because the seller's agent didn't send it to us. So this is one thing we're going to have to reach back out on. So and then I'm going to attach the lead-based paint disclosure, which I already have earlier. Remember, we sent a copy to the lender as well. Flood disclosure, again, we don't have that. Now we go to the seller's disclosure. Continue to go down the line. ABA, this is affiliated business disclosure. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to download this. And I also know we need the wire fraud in a minute, so I'm going to download that. Now we're going to attach the ABA. Here it is. Wire fraud here. And then we have the direct compensation agreement. This is the form that the seller signed, right? Saying that they're going to compensate us. So here's the form here, the 2.5%. That's signed. I want to make sure I've signed everything so they don't kick it back, and I have to go back and make sure I have everything correct. So that's why I double check, so I don't have to go back again later in the future. And then here's number 13, MLS slash broker slash agent summary pending status. So how do we get this? We go back to this MLS sheet and it already says pending. So we hit print, we hit broker synopsis, then we hit print to PDF. So there's a lot of ways for us to save this as a PDF. Number one, the easiest way is to just hit that download button here. But in case you don't get that button, you can hit print. And then under more settings, you can put open in PDF. And then if I hit Command P, which is for print, there's this little drop down right here at the bottom. I can save as PDF. And I'll hit save. And then I'll hit attach. Here's my broker synopsis. And I'm going to attach that in there. So what the broker wants to see is just this pending status. And then on there, it'll show that you're the agent. So guys, that is it. Don't worry about the copy of the CDA yet. This is for later after they approve your file. So if we did everything correctly, the only thing we need back to get is number 4, EMD receipt, and the flood disclosure. So while I'm already in the file, I'm going to go back to the seller's agent, and I'm even going to do her a favor. I'm going to give her a copy of the flood, because maybe she didn't know yet. I mean, this is a new form that just came out probably a month ago. And I'm going to respond back. So again, they need to sign this form even if the property is not in the flood zone. I'm going to send this off to her. Again, I don't want to just be like, hey, you're missing the flood disclosure. Get that to me ASAP. Well, maybe she doesn't know about it. So I'm going to give her, I'm going to make her life easier. And this is a reoccurring theme. Like, I'm going to do everything in my power to always make other people's life easier. Because at the end of the day, guys, this is a very small industry after you've been in it for a long time. And my path, your path may cross with Andrea's again, and maybe may cross with her brokerage again. So, just like how important it is for us to have a good relationship with the customer, well, I take that same mentality with other agents that we work with. Because next time, let's say she has another listing where the buyer or vice versa, they'll say, oh, wow, Dana was a pleasure to work with on the last transaction. Louise, Catherine was a pleasure to work with on the last transaction. And I had that exact, very similar case happen where they selected our offer because they really enjoyed working together, with me or with, Louise or Catherine in the future, right? But if during the transaction, if we kind of have some animosity between us, like, hey, give me that flood disclosure now, that Andrea next time is going to think, well, wow, that guy was a little bit of a jerk, right? So this is why I always like to make people's life as easy as possible. And same thing with the title company, same thing with the lender, right? We just want to uphold ourselves to a level of highest professionalism. So I'm going to send this off to Andrea. Then for right now, guys, SkySlope is done. There's nothing else for us to do. We've gone as far as we can. So to recap, the next step for us to follow up would be to make sure, so number one, make sure buyer receives EMD instructions from the title. Make sure inspection is scheduled. And number three, make sure application is made for mortgage. So these are all things that you guys have to keep on top of mind. You may sometimes, I'd even set myself a calendar reminder of these dates so that it stays top of mind. So, I mean, this is just one transaction, right? But imagine if you have 4, 5, 6 transactions at any one time, all these dates will start to get jumbled up. So it's very, very important that we keep track of all these dates. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions, fire away and let me know anytime. You guys have a great rest of the day. Take care.